The tension in the congressional hearing room was palpable even before Representative Jim Jordan stormed in. Cameras were rolling. Journalists shuffled for position. Everyone knew the session would be fiery, but no one expected the explosion that was coming. Representative Jasmine Crockett, seated confidently in a navy blue blazer, had just finished reviewing her notes. She knew Jordan was gunning for her. He'd made it obvious all week on social media, hinting at some dramatic exposure during the hearing. But Crockett wasn't rattled. She leaned back, hands calmly folded over a legal pad, waiting for whatever storm he intended to unleash. Jordan opened the session like a cannon shot. "This entire committee has become a joke," he barked, slamming his fist on the desk. "And Representative Crockett, you're the biggest embarrassment of them all." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed in. Staffers froze. Crockett didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, and waited. Jordan continued his tirade, waving documents in the air, trying to paint her as uninformed, unqualified, and politically reckless. "You've turned this into a circus," he shouted. "You don't belong here." For a full 30 seconds, Crockett said nothing. Just stared. Calmly. Silently. Then, as Jordan paused to catch his breath, she finally spoke. "Are you finished throwing your tantrum, or would you like a juice box first?" The room erupted. Reporters gasped. Staffers covered their mouths. And the internet? It was already exploding, the moment Jasmine Crockett delivered that calm, cutting line, "Are you finished throwing your tantrum, or would you like a juice box first?" The entire hearing room fell into stunned silence. Even Jim Jordan, usually quick to strike back, blinked like he'd been slapped in slow motion. His mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. And then came the laughter. Not from Crockett. Not from her Democratic colleagues. But from the back of the room, journalists, staffers, even a few stunned aides on Jordan's own side, caught off guard by the sharpness of her response. The clip was already being clipped, uploaded, and tweeted by political accounts and media outlets. On Twitter, Jasmine Crockett just body-slammed Jim Jordan with the calmest takedown I've ever seen. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink. Absolute savage. #JuiceBoxMoment tropical drink fire, Jordan tried to recover. "Don't patronize me, Representative," he snapped, pointing his finger. "This isn't a joke." But Crockett wasn't flustered. She leaned forward slightly, microphone perfectly positioned. "Then perhaps try conducting yourself like it isn't one," she said evenly. "Because so far, the only circus act here is the man yelling across the room." Another wave of gasps and applause rippled through the chamber. The committee chair tried to gavel order. But the moment had already gone viral. Crockett wasn't just holding her ground, she was commanding it. Red in the face and clearly rattled, Jim Jordan slammed a folder on the table and tried to reclaim control of the moment. "You think this is funny?" he barked. "You think mocking a serious investigation makes you look smart? This is exactly why no one takes your side seriously." Crockett remained composed, her hands calmly folded on the desk. "I think what's funny," she replied coolly, "is a man who claims to be about law and order acting like he just lost recess privileges." The audience behind her snorted with laughter. Jordan was fuming. "You're deflecting, as always," he barked, now pointing at her with exaggerated rage. "You haven't answered a single question. You don't even know the facts." Crockett raised one hand, cutting through his volume with sheer grace. "Congressman, I've read every line of this report. I've been here for every minute of this session. And unlike you, I don't confuse shouting with substance." The chair attempted to gavel again, but by this point, the energy had shifted entirely. A viral tweet flashed across the screen on a nearby journalist's phone. "Jasmine Crockett is dismantling Jim Jordan with surgical precision and zero emotion. It's like watching a tornado try to argue with a brick wall." Jordan tried one more jab. "You're playing to the cameras." Crockett finally smirked. No, Congressman. I'm just not afraid of them. The gallery exploded again. She hadn't raised her voice once, and she didn't need to. The hashtag #JuiceBoxJim was already trending number 2 on Twitter. By the time the committee recessed for lunch, Jasmine Crockett's calm takedown of Jim Jordan had already ignited the internet. Clips of her juice box line were on every major platform. YouTube, Crockett destroys Jordan with one sentence, watch this mic drop moment. Instagram Reels, split-screen reactions. Influencers lip-syncing, would you like a juice box first? With captions like, when your coworker throws a fit during Monday meetings. TikTok, teens, lawyers, even teachers recreating the scene in comedic skits. Some edited Jordan's tantrum with cartoon crying sounds and goldfish crackers flying across the screen. And on Twitter, X, that wasn't a debate. That was a public service. Thank you, Jasmine Crockett. But while Crockett was being celebrated like a gladiator, Jim Jordan's team was scrambling. His spokesperson tried to downplay the moment as grandstanding from the left. But it was too late, the narrative had slipped out of their control. Cable news lit up, CNN anchor, a rare moment where silence, composure, and a well-timed phrase did more than shouting ever could. MSNBC guest, Crockett didn't just win the exchange, she defined the entire hearing with a single sentence. Even late-night hosts jumped in. The Daily Show, Jim Jordan got handed a juice box and a reality check. Meanwhile, Crockett. She was back in her office, sipping actual juice from a box someone had left on her desk as a joke, smiling at her staff as the notifications rolled in. She hadn't planned to go viral. She just had enough of the noise. As the media frenzy escalated, Jasmine Crockett remained astonishingly calm. While pundits and commentators turned her quip into a cultural moment, she focused on what she'd come to the hearing for in the first place: accountability, truth, and policy. Later that day, a reporter caught up with her in the hallway. Microphones surged forward. Congresswoman Crockett, did you mean to go viral with the juice box comment? She chuckled softly. I meant to keep my composure, she said. If people want to talk about that moment more than the real issues we're facing, that's on them. But I came prepared. I always do. When asked if she had a message for Jim Jordan, she didn't take the bait. I have no personal issue with any of my colleagues, she said. But I do believe the American people deserve leaders who prioritize facts over fury. Her reply only fueled the admiration online. People praised her restraint, her poise, her refusal to descend into the kind of political mudslinging others thrived on. A tweet from a political journalist went viral on its own: Jasmine Crockett isn't just winning the internet. She's raising the standard for how to deal with manufactured outrage, with grace, facts, and just enough bite to make it unforgettable. That evening, as she left the Capitol, a group of young staffers applauded quietly from the steps. One handed her a small paper bag. Inside, a juice box. And a note, for emergencies only. Crockett smiled, shook her head, and whispered, I guess we're really doing this, huh? While Jasmine Crockett's popularity skyrocketed, Jim Jordan was facing the opposite trajectory. Behind closed doors, GOP aides were in full damage control mode. Internal memos leaked to the press revealed frantic attempts to shift focus back to committee objectives. But the public had already moved on, and they weren't siding with Jordan. Conservative talk shows tried to spin it. He was ambushed. She disrespected a senior member of Congress. It was a setup. But every time they aired the clip, it only made Crockett look stronger. Late-night montages played side-by-side footage of Jordan's shouting and Crockett's composed response. The contrast was brutal. One segment even dubbed in toddler cries over Jordan's rant, followed by a serene lullaby during Crockett's reply. Meanwhile, back at the Capitol, whispers began circulating. Some within Jordan's own party were growing uneasy. Jim went too far, one Republican aide admitted anonymously to a journalist. He walked straight into it, and she owned him without even standing up. Even donors reportedly started calling GOP leadership, asking why Jordan had turned a routine hearing into a viral embarrassment. And Jasmine? She still hadn't made a single post about it. Not one. No victory lap. No gloating. Just work. In an evening interview with PBS, she said, "I don't need to shout to be heard. The truth has a voice of its own." The interviewer paused. "Do you think Congressman Jordan will apologize?" Crockett smiled faintly. "That would require reflection. And I don't think he packed that." By the next morning, Capitol Hill was buzzing with more than just politics. It was buzzing with memes, parodies, and a trending hashtag that refused to die, #JuiceboxJim. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It had become a symbol, a digital shorthand for political temper tantrums, performative outrage, and the kind of grandstanding the public was clearly tired of. Activists, teachers, veterans, even corporate professionals started using the hashtag to call out dramatic behavior in their own fields. Boss threw a fit over a missed email. "We got #JuiceboxJim energy in this office today. My 5-year-old acted more mature than Jim Jordan. Where's her committee seat? Big respect to Representative Crockett. Cool under fire. That's leadership." Mainstream media leaned in. MSNBC did a full segment titled, "When Calm Cuts Louder Than Chaos, The Crockett Moment." Fox News, in contrast, tried damage control, calling it a distraction orchestrated by left-wing media, but even their viewers were split. The footage was too clear, too raw, too viral to spin away. In the background, Crockett continued her work, meetings, hearings, constituent calls. When asked again by press if she wanted to capitalize on the moment, she gave a now iconic reply, "I didn't go viral. Accountability did." Meanwhile, Jordan's staff canceled a scheduled press conference, citing scheduling conflicts. But rumors swirled that donors were pressuring him to lay low. The committee chair issued a rare public statement urging members to maintain decorum, on both sides, but everyone knew who the message was truly aimed at. For Crockett, this wasn't just a win. It was a signal, that intelligence, grace, and timing could still triumph in a world flooded with noise. Back at Representative Jasmine Crockett's office, the mood was electric, but focused. Staffers were fielding non-stop interview requests, inboxes overflowing with messages of support, and offers for national TV appearances. Celebrities, civil rights leaders, and even retired senators were publicly praising her poise under fire. One staffer joked, "We should print merch." Another slid a mock-up onto Crockett's desk, a navy t-shirt with bold white letters, "Stay calm. Pass the juice box." Crockett laughed for the first time all day. But she quickly brought the team back to reality. "All right y'all," she said, standing at the head of the conference table. "I appreciate the love. But this isn't the mission." They nodded. She continued. "We're not here to trend. We're here to legislate. Let's make sure we're helping people after the cameras stop rolling too." Still, her staff couldn't help but feel a shift. For months, she'd been underestimated, mocked by pundits, interrupted in hearings, spoken over. But now, the same voices that once dismissed her were suddenly paying attention. And while Crockett remained grounded, she understood what this moment meant. A quiet conversation with her chief of staff summed it up best. "You know," he said, "this wasn't just a win for you. It was a message to every person who's been shouted down and told to sit quiet." Crockett nodded. "Then let's make sure we keep speaking up, for all of them." Meanwhile, across the Capitol, Jordan was still silent. The man who yelled loudest was now nowhere to be seen. While Jasmine Crockett surged in public favor, Jim Jordan's office was under siege, not from protesters, but from his own allies. His voicemail was flooded. Donors wanted answers. Committee leaders were privately furious. And conservative strategists? They were calling the whole thing a disaster. Behind closed doors, Jordan's aides tried desperately to reset the narrative. Maybe we release a statement saying he was passionate about oversight, one advisor suggested. Another snapped, passionate doesn't mean unhinged. Every attempt to pivot failed. The clip kept resurfacing. The memes kept evolving. And worst of all, #JuiceboxJim wasn't going away. It had crossed into mainstream culture, mentioned on morning talk shows, SNL sketches, and even at Jeopardy! Question: This representative went viral after being calmly shut down with a juice box comment. Jordan refused to apologize. Instead, he avoided interviews, ducked cameras, and declined to attend his scheduled Fox News appearance. Meanwhile, within the party, murmurs of doubt started to spread. One GOP staffer leaked to Politico, "We can't afford another viral tantrum. He's becoming a liability, not a leader." And then came the polling data. In a fresh public approval poll, Jordan's numbers had dipped sharply, especially among independents and suburban moderates. Meanwhile, Crockett's approval had spiked. Reporters reached out for Jordan's response. His office issued a two-line statement: Congressman Jordan remains committed to his role on the committee. He will not be distracted by theatrics. It was ironic. The only theatrics had come from him. And Jasmine Crockett? She was already back in session, pressing for amendments on healthcare access, speaking with quiet force. No yelling. No chaos. Just impact. As Jim Jordan's influence waned, Jasmine Crockett's star continued to rise, not just in headlines, but in halls of power. She was invited onto every major news outlet, CNN, MSNBC, The View, even 60 Minutes. But she turned most of them down. When asked why, she replied simply, "I'm not here to be famous. I'm here to be effective." That humility, paired with her razor-sharp intellect, only deepened public admiration. Meanwhile, young voters, particularly women, began rallying around her. A wave of new political accounts popped up across TikTok and Instagram dedicated to analyzing her speeches, her legal brilliance, and her handling of political bullying. One viral post read, "She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard." Capitol insiders started taking notice too. Members of her own party quietly floated the idea that Crockett could one day hold a leadership position, maybe sooner than anyone expected. A senior Democrat was quoted in The Hill saying, "Crockett just showed the blueprint, how to dismantle chaos with composure." That's the kind of leadership the public is begging for. Even a few moderate Republicans, off record, admitted she had handled herself better than most. And behind the scenes, Jasmine was using her new spotlight to push actual policy forward. She introduced a new bipartisan transparency bill that gained unexpected traction. A quiet win, but a meaningful one. As for Jordan, he finally returned to the Capitol, quieter, more subdued. Gone was the bluster. He offered no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. But no one needed him to. Because everyone had already seen it. The man who shouted. And the woman who answered with calm. Weeks passed, but the moment between Jim Jordan and Jasmine Crockett didn't fade, it crystallized. Political science classes dissected it. Leadership podcasts quoted it. Even corporate HR trainings began using it as an example of emotional intelligence in high-stakes conflict. The Smithsonian reached out to Crockett's office. They requested the original legal pad and pen she'd used during the hearing, along with the now famous juice box gifted by her staff. It would be displayed in a special exhibit on Modern Moments in American Civics. Crockett agreed, under one condition, that the display include context, not just the viral moment, but the full transcript of the hearing and the reforms she was fighting for when Jordan lost control. She wanted the substance remembered, not just the soundbite. And so it was. Meanwhile, in D.C., whispers grew louder. Crockett was being considered for a key role on a prestigious oversight subcommittee. Her peers, many of whom had once dismissed her, now watched her with new respect. She hadn't just earned attention. She'd earned credibility. One journalist summed it up best in a front-page feature: "In an era where volume often wins, Jasmine Crockett proved that grace, preparation, and precision still have the power to change everything." As for the public, they weren't done with her. Supporters began organizing town halls, college events, and fundraisers, not for a campaign Crockett had announced, but for one they hoped she eventually would. She'd become more than a congresswoman. She'd become a symbol. The day Jasmine Crockett walked into her next congressional hearing, the room fell silent, but not out of fear. Out of respect. Even her fiercest critics sat upright. The viral moment with Jim Jordan had not just elevated her status, it had rewritten the rules of engagement in Washington. She wasn't loud. She wasn't theatrical. She was effective. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and political operatives took notes as Crockett calmly delivered her opening statement, this time on government accountability and civil rights enforcement. Not a single outburst followed. Not a single interruption. And when she concluded, one Republican member, visibly uneasy, quietly said, "Thank you, Congresswoman." Outside the chamber, a crowd had gathered. Young people, parents, educators, and activists stood in quiet admiration as she passed. Some held signs: "Lead like Crockett, power without noise, calm is the new courage." Later that evening, Jasmine stood on her office balcony overlooking the Capitol dome. Her chief of staff joined her. "You know, this isn't just a moment anymore," he said. "It's a movement." Crockett didn't respond right away. She looked out, thoughtful, then finally smiled. "Good," she said. "Because moments fade. But movements build." And with that, she turned back inside, ready for whatever came next. The juice box was still on her desk. Unopened. A quiet reminder of the day the loudest voice in the room was the calmest one. Weeks after the exchange that rocked Congress, Jasmine Crockett's name was no longer just associated with a viral moment, it had become a standard. In high schools across the country, debate teams used her strategy as a case study in controlled rhetoric. In corporate boardrooms, leadership coaches cited her poise under pressure. And on college campuses, students wore shirts that read, "Stay calm. Drop facts. Juice box energy, activated." But Crockett remained grounded. She didn't chase the spotlight, it chased her. Her focus stayed on legislation, community outreach, and lifting up the next generation. She launched a mentorship initiative for young women in law and politics, called the Calm Command, a direct response to the chaos she had faced and conquered. Meanwhile, Jim Jordan's moment faded. The rage, the finger-pointing, the shouting, it had all collapsed under the weight of one woman's quiet confidence. He returned to his regular duties, diminished, rarely speaking up in hearings unless absolutely necessary. But the impact Crockett made? It rippled. In a speech at Howard University, Crockett addressed a packed auditorium. No teleprompters. No theatrics. Just her voice. "You don't have to match chaos with chaos," she said. "You don't have to scream to be heard. If you know your purpose, let it speak louder than any insult. Trust me, the world's listening." A standing ovation followed, not for a catchphrase, not for a meme, but for a message. A reminder that in a noisy world, grace still cuts through. And with that, Jasmine Crockett walked off stage, not just a leader, but a legacy in motion.